Marauders number 13 is the fifth chapter in X-Men Ten of Swords, with Storm traveling back to Wakanda where she was once queen in order to retrieve the Wakandan sword made of vibranium known as Skybreaker. Today I'll answer, what have we learned about Storm's new sword in this Krakoa vs. Arrako tournament? What do Storm's actions mean for her future with Wakanda and the Black Panther family? And how will Wakanda respond to Krakoa? Plus, theories and predictions for what's to come both in the Dawn of X and, of course, in the Ten of Swords event that is ongoing. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. You are listening to Krakin Krakoa number 98. Quick update for everyone, Krakin Krakoa number 100 will be live this Sunday, October 11th at 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern Time, with special guest rapper Open Mike Eagle. We're going to be taking listener questions, responding to feedback and theories, sharing some of our own, and talking all things X-Men. If that sounds fun to you, check out the link in the show notes or the live stream scheduled on the Comic Book Herald channel. And of course, as always, if you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel or Krakin Krakoa, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Writer, Vita Ayala. Artist, Matteo Lolli. Colors, Edgar Delgado. Letters by Cory, Petit. Vita Ayala makes their official debut in the Dawn of X and nails a fantastic first issue, setting the stage for their takeover of New Mutants, starting with issue number 14 following the Ten of Swords event. I really love the opening artistically for a few reasons, the first of which is Kate and Aurora getting to actually share a smile and be joyous. Especially with Storm getting a fresh lease on life after the events of Giant Size X-Men, it's extremely nice to see. Plus, I really dug Matteo Lolli's history of Storm panels on the side of the current action. I thought these were absolutely awesome, where if you don't know the history of Storm, okay, cool, just different visions of Storm throughout her X-Men career, but if you do, it so clearly illustrates what Storm has gone through throughout Marvel Comics history. It's a very fun visual trick that I would like to see more comics do. Storm knows that she must return to Wakanda to retrieve Skybreaker, a new sword to the Marvel Universe with roots literally in the formation of Wakanda's great vibranium mound, and the first Wakandan king who forged the weapon. Definitely a big part of the appeal of this issue is how thoroughly Ayala works through Wakandan culture and all this new myth building, while simultaneously giving Storm a very significant spotlight. Aurora Monroe is absolutely unique among X-Men in that she is forever a part of Marvel's Mutants, but she's also been a thoroughly crucial part of Black Panther comics since at least the mid-2000s in Marvel history. Storm and T'Challa's romance runs back decades in the Marvel Universe, but it was during 2006's Civil War that the two actually got married. Storm became Queen of Wakanda for this time, until the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, when the two found themselves on opposite sides of the battle. Phoenix 5 Namor devastated Wakanda on, technically Team X-Men, and T'Challa annulled their marriage more or less as a result. Even so, Storm and T'Challa have remained especially close during the Ta-Nehisi Coates run of Black Panther, as well as the Shuri miniseries, and Storm is very much on friendly terms with the Great Nation, or at least she was heading into this issue. Their romance has been rekindled fairly significantly, again, in the most recent issues of Coates' Black Panther, to the point where, will they, won't they get back together again, was not an unrealistic question. So Storm, she visits here Wakanda, she petitions Wakandan royalty, Queen Mother Ramonda, and Princess Shuri for the Skybreaker sword. Now they tell her that T'Challa is absent during this time, of course, off on his duties elsewhere. There's a really great history here as well of Wakandan blades and customs. Again, just like very kind of short spurts of myth building that really adds to Wakanda, which already has an enormous amount of myth building to it, of course. Not just the Coates run most recently, but you run it back to Priest, you run it back to Don McGregor even, Rage of the Panther in the 70s. There's a ton of detail that goes into Wakandan culture, and I really like what Ayala and Lolli are contributing here in the midst of an X-Men event. So Storm explains the situation to Shuri and Ramonda in a nifty bit of concise exposition. For what it's worth, Wakanda is totally game to send soldiers in aid, but obviously we know that's not really what Storm is after. She has to gather her sword for the tournament. There's an interesting lack of understanding for the enemy here coming from Sword as well. Not to go all, let's hear this from the Orc's point of view, but she calls the Arrakko twisted and cruel, and what does she know of the Arrakko mutants, really? I mean, she's gained some insight via the Lying Summoner's Quiet Council presentation, but that's hardly a lot, and again, he's a liar who lies. That's his deal, as has been revealed in creation. I think there's probably a little more to Arakko here than we're giving credit to, just in terms of, oh, they're the enemies. So Shuri has dinner with Storm, trying to convince her to wait, but clearly we're building to Storm stealing the sword and breaking trust with Wakanda. As much as I love this story for Storm, setting up Team Black Panther as these infuriating, obstinate obstacles is pretty heavy-handed. It's not necessarily more heavy-handed than the literal thousands of superhero comics that set up hero-on-hero action based on a failure to communicate. Nonetheless, Storm tells them over and over that this is a time-sensitive issue, and Shuri keeps repeating, but what if you waited a few days though? Plus, so much of the story is predicated on T'Challa being unable to communicate in any way for days, and while dude's obviously busy off avenging with regularity, his emergence later in the issue means he arguably could have answered a text with a thumbs up emoji en route. I feel like he could have sent a voice command and sent that one through. In flashbacks, we see T'Challa showing Stormbreaker and all its Skybreaker, excuse me. If he had Stormbreaker there, that'd be a reveal. And all its security during the time frame Storm and T'Challa were married and ruling Wakanda together. Storm even hypothesizes that like maybe he showed me all this so that I could come steal this one day because he told me everything. I've seen a lot of instant reactions about the quality of Marauders number 13 as a Storm story. And before I say more, let me be clear, I agree. It's a great Storm comic. I do want to point out, though, that it seems like a lot of readers are sleeping on Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther, where Storm has had a semi-regular supporting role, and a good one at that. So just in terms of the implication that, like, oh, this is the first time we've had a good Storm comic in forever, I guess I, as a fan of the character, would push back on that, because I think Black Panther has done some pretty good work with the character there, but certainly it's not as good, I would say, as seeing her own an X-Men comic like this, where she gets to take on all the action, the stealth, the mission, and of course all the politics and diplomacy that goes into going into Wakanda. So T'Challa does show up, and after some manly, kingly heartbreak, he does let Storm go without a fight on the way out. You know, he believes her and he trusts her enough to say, all right, clearly you need this for some good reason, otherwise you wouldn't be doing all of these things like, oh, I don't know, breaking into one of our most sacred vaults. Black Panther then, though, he does destroy the Krakoan gate, whether it's out of spite, out of anger, out of a betrayal, whatever you want to call it. He says, all right, they want to come back. If Storm wants to come back, it will not be on their terms, essentially. So it's referenced here, but it's worth remembering Wakanda is one of very few nations that are not aligned with Krakoan medicine and treaties, and while there's no outright hostility at this point, severing the Krakoan gate in Storm's presence separates the nations even further. I don't think there's any reason to believe she's instigated like a war between the nations, but certainly it'll be harder, albeit far from impossible, to walk this back. While I'm certainly invested in the last point regarding Wakanda, and again, like, it wasn't read for no reason in that House of X data page where it was listed as a quote-unquote hostile nation because they do not need mutant drugs. Nonetheless, it's actually T'Challa's status as the leading Avenger that intrigues me more. Back in my How Hickman's X-Men Will Conquer the Galaxy video, I described how the X-Men and Avengers are on a fast track to another conflict, this time with cosmic stakes. So it's not going to be like Avengers vs. X-Men 2 is not what I'm pitching, but again, they're forming all these cosmic allies in the Marvel space age. That's going to matter. That's going somewhere. You can check out the video if you want to see the whole thing. But deepening the divide between T'Challa and Storm only increases the likelihood of this massive cosmic realignment taking place in the future with, again, Avengers and X-Men positioned on alternate sides of the equation. So, Skybreaker, it's Storm's new vibranium sword, stolen from Wakanda to defend Krakoa. It's pretty cool looking and sounds awesome. It certainly sounds like the ideal sword for Storm too, as the sword can convert energy into larger amounts of energy, aka whoever Storm's facing is looking down a whole lot of lightning blasts. The secret history is kind of baffling though. It's enticing, but it's baffling. Prolonged contact with non-living materials, even if they were once biological in origin, strengthens them. That was the line that caught my attention the most. I really don't know what to make of it. I've thought about it quite a bit. Definitely, like, the parenthetical there, even if they were once biological in origin, made me think immediately of, like, oh, are we talking techno-organic virus here, where something biological was taken over by a technology, like Warlock and all this stuff I think might be happening with the Phalanx. But again, I'm not sure that would constitute non-living materials. So I feel like there's a seed planted there. I just don't know what it is. I'm excited to find out here in the future. On the Otherworld data page front, we do get a couple others here. I mentioned in the Krakin Krakoa coverage of Ten of Swords Chapter 3 and 4, immediately preceding this, that I'll bring these all together for a single video deep dive. But Mercator, I do want to touch on, it continues to stand out. As I mentioned, when this was first revealed in Creation with the other, or maybe it was X Factor, I don't remember now. But Mercator it's highlighted in blue. It's clearly a region that stands out. We don't actually know the region's name, even though here we get a little more information saying he promises he's keeping it safe and that he would like it closed to the public until he feels it's ready. Again, like, this being highlighted in this way, this being a secret, and it being literally named Mercator suggests that it could be Absalom Mercator, Mr. M, an Omega-level mutant on Hickman's, Omega-level mutant chart back in House of X. What I want to throw out here, though, and I'll go into this in a lot of detail when I do the whole Otherworld deep dive, but this would be a really weird time to bring in Absalom Mercator, to bring in Omega-level mutant who is regent of a kingdom of Otherworld during the Ten of Swords event. That seems like a really strange curveball. Plus, why the secretiveness of this kingdom if Mercator is the dude's last name and it is Mr. M? That's actually, like, it's not like I cracked something super secret here. You know what I mean? I just know one of the names on the Omega level list. So I'll be curious if there's a lot more to this realm than perhaps we're giving it credit for. Also, props to the quote cold open, slapping us with a quote from an Onslaught survivor. That's a very specific reference, and a designation that doesn't really seem like it happens without great intent. I mean, I certainly haven't seen any quotes in the Dawn of X from the likes of a Dark Phoenix survivor or Slug Sadami accidentally survivor. For the unfamiliar, Onslaught is a mid-90s X-Men creation, the merger of Professor X and Magneto into a giant-sized threat to the Marvel Universe, and the main reason you don't really hear about comics from like late 96 through early 98. I actually think Onslaught remains one of the more fascinating subplots of Moira McTaggart's journals, as we've seen her in House of X number 6 talk about the effect she's having on Professor X in this timeline, and what will happen when he breaks. To me, that's a suggestion like, oh, when he breaks, that's probably when he becomes Onslaught. That's when he goes dark in some capacity. If nothing else, this quote seems to confirm that Onslaught indeed happened in this lifeline. Again, like, there is some wiggle room for like the things in X-Men history that did or did not happen, given what has been laid out and like very, very officially been made canonical in the House of X, Powers of 10, Dawn of X era of Hickman's X-Men. This is an interesting one. I think probably not going to be relevant for Ten of Swords, but down the road, or if we're thinking about Onslaught at least a little, that's fascinating to me. So Marauders number 13 is an awesome issue. I think it really works. I liked it more even than the Wolverine two-parter, which were chapters 3 and 4. The Krakoan reads next time Subterfuge in Hellions number 5 will be the next chapter. It'll be chapter number 6. Gotta say here, I found the Hellions' presence in this event pretty intriguing because no one on the team is actually one of the Sword Bearers. Gorgon is probably the biggest wild card of the bunch among the Sword Bearers, and a character who could actually make sense to join this team. Actually, a lot of sense given his more murderous impulses, but he's been a Hickman favorite. You know, back in Secret Warriors, Hickman wrote him a lot, and obviously those are Swords or God Killer and Grasscutter are from Secret Warriors, not from Secret Warriors, but they used heavily there. So I'd be pretty surprised if Hickman didn't want to use Gorgon in issues of X-Men coming up. It would make some sense if instead in Hellions, like Sinister sent the Hellions into Mercator to try and obtain that Omega level DNA. If Absalom Mercator is in fact the Regent, that's one of literally 2 Omega levels that Sinister doesn't have DNA for and doesn't know where he is, the other being Legion. But that would also require him knowing Mr. M was there, which I don't know how he would know that at this point in time. He's very good at gathering information, but that seems like a heck of a lot. So let me know what you all think about any of this. Comments, theories, if you're excited about Krakin Krakoa Live number 100 this Sunday, October 11th, or you got questions for that, share them here as well, and I'll try to check out as many as I can. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com. You can find ways to support the site over at patreon.com/comicbookherald. All that support definitely is greatly appreciated and goes a long way to encouraging me to continue making Krakin Krakoa videos, as does liking and subscribing the channel. So thanks everybody for your support there. Again, you can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at comicbookherald online, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Look for Best Comics Ever and My Marvelous Year podcast for more from me. Otherwise, thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.